So the world has a food problem. We need to grow more food, good, nutritious food, and we need to grow this more good, nutritious food without harming the planet. This is a challenge that one of the ways in which you could address this challenge is through this concept of data and AI-driven agriculture. What we mean by a data-driven agri-food system is if every entity in the agriculture and food supply chain, all the way from input companies to farmers to food processors, food logistics companies, and the consumer, if every entity starts to use data and AI, it leads to new efficiencies throughout the supply chain. But it doesn't just stop there. If every entity in the food and agriculture value chain starts sharing this data with each other, this leads to new efficiencies. This leads to new business models around sustainability, track and trace, nutrition, and so on. Today, I'll go deeper into data-driven agriculture. One of the things that you could do with this data and AI-driven agriculture is you could map every farm in the world and overlay it with data. For example, what's the soil nitrogen level? What's the soil moisture level? If you can build accurate maps like this, it enables techniques like precision agriculture. With precision agriculture, you can apply inputs only where it is needed. You can apply water where it is needed, chemicals where it is needed. And precision agriculture has been shown to improve yields, to reduce costs. It's also better for the environment for the same reasons. You're not putting in more chemicals. You're not wasting water. However, precision agriculture as a technique was proposed more than 40 years ago. And right now, its adoption is still quite limited to maybe GPS-driven tractors, not beyond that. And the biggest reason for the lack of adoption is the cost of this data-driven agriculture techniques. This was recently reinforced in a study by McKinsey, which said that around 50% of the people don't adopt data-driven agriculture techniques because of the high cost of existing solutions. This has been the motivating factor of our work at Microsoft for over 10 years now. Partly driven because I grew up in India, I spent a lot of time growing up in farms, and partly because we want to help transform the world so that every farmer anywhere in the world can start using data and AI. In the previous TEDx talk, I talked about other challenges with connectivity, with edge compute, with cloud to enable data-driven agriculture. Today, I'll talk about the challenges with AI. So one of the things, what we need to do with AI is, for example, I talked about maps like this. What if I took you to a farm and asked the question, what's the soil nitrogen level throughout the farm at this point? To get an accurate map like this, you would need lots and lots of sensors or lots and lots of samples from the farm. But putting lots of sensors is expensive to deploy, to manage. It will come in the way of the farmer as the farmer does the day-to-day job. So the key question we asked is, can we build maps like this using very few sensors, very few samples? In order to do that, the technique we use is that of multimodal AI. The key challenge we realized with AI in agriculture is that agriculture is data sparse. You don't have large amounts of data from the farm. So the way we build these kind of maps is first, we either fly a drone. If you don't have a drone, you can use a helium-filled balloon with a camera mounted on it. Or if not, you can use satellite data to create maps like this. Once you create a map, we use AI to determine what are the places in the farm where you need to get a sample or put a sensor. Once you've done that, wherever you have a sensor and you have the image, we use that to train a machine learning model for the entire farm. And we use that model to predict these other values in the farm where you do not have a sensor or a sample. We wrote a paper on this where we showed that using this multimodal technique of using sensors with aerial imagery can give you 3 times more accurate maps than existing techniques that only relied on samples. And in fact, we took this across we've released the entire thing in open source right now around Project Farm Vibes, where we have taken 65 different workflows of multimodal AI, where we combine different modalities from sensors and drones, sensors and satellites, weather stations in the farm with weather services, synthetic aperture radar with optical satellite, and so on. And we released this all in open source. And later on, I'll talk about how much benefit these techniques are providing to farmers worldwide. But it is not just about getting insights from the farm. The other challenge is, how do you convey these insights to the growers or any other stakeholder in the farming industry? So once ChatGPT came out, we actually went and we analyzed every stakeholder and looked at how would generative AI transform the lives and make different stakeholders more productive, all the way from farmers to bankers to policymakers and so on. One of the first systems we built was a way to ask questions about a farm anywhere in the world and get insights about the farm. So how do you go about doing it? We built this first for Washington State, where the first thing we do is for any polygon, a polygon could be a farm, a field, a plot. For that polygon, we bring together all the data from different sensors, from drones, from satellites, all in one place in the cloud. This was what was Project FarmBeats. Once you get all the data in one place, for example, it could be a farm here in North Dakota, and you'd have all the information about it. But information by itself doesn't mean much. The next thing we do is we use farmvibes.ai to extract the farm context, things like what has been planted, what is the harvest date, what was the seed date, when were chemicals applied, what chemicals were applied. All that is the farm context. Once we get that context, when a user asks a question, we augment that prompt. Suppose you ask ChatGPT that question. Imagine that question being augmented with the farm context, and we ground it on USDA data. We then convey all of that to GPT-4, and we come back with an answer that we give to the grower. We actually have an entire research paper on it, would recommend people to read it. One of the other things we came up with then was, well, if you can start getting these insights, then what would it take to have any of these AI models help farmers like an agronomist? What would it take to build an agronomist assistant? So in the US, if you have to be an agronomist, you have to pass the Certified Crop Advisor exam. That is the CCA exam. We took GPT-4, and on top of that, we put multiple other techniques like an ensemble technique. And we then took the CCA exam, and we got 94% grade in that CCA exam. We took the exam in the Brazil exam with Embrapa. These were long-form questions, and we got 84% grades in this agronomist exam. We took the same exam in India, the Agri exam. The AI got 79% grade, while the number one human got 78% grades. So the point here with the AI agronomist is not that AI can replace agronomists, but an AI agronomist could be a very powerful agronomist assistant. It could be something available to growers 24/7 to answer questions and be a second opinion of what should be done in the farm. Once we did this work, we also evaluated it for different questions. And GPT-4 and AI does make mistakes. Like one of the questions you're seeing here was, the question was, who was the advocate of the Martandam Rural Development Program? This was in India. GPT-4 did not know the answer, but it made an intelligent guess. It said, this is an exam in India, must be an Indian, so it's Mahatma Gandhi. It wasn't Mahatma Gandhi, it was Spencer Hatch. So in order to then fix these kind of hallucinations, what we did was we fine-tuned these models. We came up with different techniques to ground the AI on agriculture so that it doesn't make mistakes. We fine-tuned GPT-4, not just the regular language model, we also fine-tuned the reasoning model so that now it can start thinking like a farmer in different regions. For example, you could have a model trained for North Dakota where it will think like an agronomist, like a grower in North Dakota. For example, in this case, the question was a cold front is coming in. Should I run the overhead sprinklers or wind machines to protect my apple orchard? It'll go about, think for a certain period of time before coming up with the model recommendation. Our vision with this generative AI is that then in the cloud, what you're seeing on the right is you'll have these large fine-tuned models for agriculture, but then you'll have smaller specific models as well for different crops, for different regions, for different languages. The other thing you'll do in the cloud is for every farm that you need to monitor, you'll maintain a digital twin, a context of the farm. Things like what is the plant date, what is the harvest date, all of that will be in the cloud. And then in the farm, you'll have machines either on the tractor or it could be in the farmer's house, which then syncs with the cloud, carries over this information. So when a user asks a question, a farmer asks a question, it will take the speech, it will translate it to text, figure out which model to use, the right grounding data to use, come up with the answer, convert it back to speech, and read it out to the grower. We've evaluated these systems across different farms around the world. We've looked at the entire life cycle in a farmer's life, every crop cycle, all the way from planning to pre-planting to pre-emergence, post-emergence, to harvest, post-harvest. We looked at all the different technologies that were used by the grower. And this is one such particular use case with Nelson Farms. This is a farm, 7,000 plus acre farm in Eastern Washington. He was a farmer featured in the Wall Street Journal last week, in which I contributed as well. Wherein for this particular farmer, using AI, he needed 38% less chemical in the farm. This was one of the more expensive chemicals he had to use. In another part of the farm, he could double the yield using some of these recommendations. He could improve the post-harvest capacity that he had in his farm as well. And it is not just in farms here. The benefit is also in farms around the world. Like, for example, very recently this year, we showed how we built a farm of the future in Baramati, which is a drought-prone region in India. And we showed how using AI, farmers could get over 20% yield for sugarcane in that part of the world. That said, we are not done. One of the newest techniques that we are working on is on truly democratizing sensing. How do you get more data from the middle of the farm? One of the biggest challenges in getting good quality data from the farm is the cost of sensors. These sensors, even a good soil moisture or soil EC sensor, could be thousands of dollars. Most farmers, especially if you look at the emerging markets, they won't spend $1,000 plus for a sensor in the farm. But the key insight was that many of them have a smartphone. If they have a smartphone, even if it's an inexpensive phone, it has a Wi-Fi chipset in it. If it has a Wi-Fi chipset in it, if we could measure the time of flight of the Wi-Fi signal, the time of flight of the Wi-Fi signal depends on the permittivity of the material. So if your soil is moist, it will take longer to traverse the same distance. But the challenge is measuring this time of the order of nanoseconds is hard. The next insight we had was that most of the Wi-Fi chipsets on your smartphone have multiple antennas. So instead of measuring the absolute time of flight, you could measure the relative time of flight. We published a paper on this where you could use your phone to measure soil moisture and soil electrical conductivity. This got one of the awards at a top-tier computer science conference. We continued that work, and very recently we showed that the Wi-Fi signals on your phone combined with the camera can then be used to measure soil carbon as well. So imagine a future where anyone could bring their phone close to soil and start getting the data about what's happening in their farm at that particular time. So this is the vision with which we are working towards. Our vision is that to truly democratize data and AI-driven agriculture so that every farmer anywhere in the world can start using data and AI to be more productive, be more profitable, and be more sustainable. Thank you.